South Africans, if given the opportunity, if we could work with him, he can really help us to turn this country around and use basic education to really turn the country around and to make our country a wonderful place to live in. Dr. Teddy Blecher. Let's give him a big hand of applause, please. Sorry, and Dr. Teddy Blecher comes from the Maharishi Institute. So he's the CEO of the Maharishi Institute, and he will introduce the team because he'll be facilitating the entire session. From now, they've got 55 minutes. We'll give them the 55 minutes that we have accorded to them, and the time is 20 past 11. Over to you, Doc. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. Thank you so much, DG. Tea break seems to have caught everybody outside. So we hope to get going with the panel. We have a wonderful panel today. We will be introducing the panelists shortly. If I could ask the panelists to please come up to the stage. Dr. Chikunda, Dr. Taylor, Professor Gravett, and Michelle de Wet as well. Wonderful. Just while we're waiting for the panelists to come up, I thought it's very important to explain why this topic is so important, entrepreneurship and 21st century skills. And it links very closely to what panelists and speakers this morning were talking about. So it's a great honor and privilege to be here, and just greeting everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to have this panel. This morning, Mr. Dlamini from KwaZulu-Natal was saying that teaching must be fun and learning must be fun, and that it is fun. The lady from Ella from Ms. Mokhalani from SACE was also talking about intrinsic motivation, autonomous regulation, and I think all of this feeds into what we're talking about when we talk about entrepreneurship and 21st century skills. But I just want to talk about it in the most really basic terms. What are we talking about? The importance is ultimately we want jobs for everybody in South Africa. And we want to reduce unemployment in our country. And if we're going to do that, where do these jobs come from? And it's important for us all to know that in South Africa, in the formal sector, 70% of all jobs in our formal sector are in small organizations, under 50 people in size. So it's those brave entrepreneurs, those brave small businesses that fight all the winds of change, etc., to survive and build a business and then employ people that employs 70% of every single South African in this country that is working in the formal sector. If we add the informal sector, which is huge, as we know, over 90% of South Africans work in a small business. They don't work in government. They don't work in the giant companies like Vodacom and MTN, the big banks, the big insurance companies. They're working in small businesses. So entrepreneurship is absolutely integral to job creation in the country. So because we want every South African to be able to be working in a dignified job and have the dignity of labor, this field of entrepreneurship and small business is absolutely essential. Some people say, well, we're a big country, we've got 60 million people, there's not enough jobs for everybody. That seems to be true on the surface. I just recently came back from India. India is absolutely booming, and next year India will overtake China as the largest population in the whole world. And India will have over 1.5 billion people. Who wants to guess what the youth unemployment rate and the unemployment rate in India is for 1.5 billion people? Anyone want to take a guess? The largest democracy in the world, 1.5 billion people. I think we're 60 million people. Who wants to guess what their unemployment rate is? 15, that's a guess. Any other guesses? How much? Yeah, okay, that's a very good answer. The unemployment rate is 7%. And youth unemployment is at that level as well. So when we think of 1.5 billion people and only 7% unemployment, it tells us size is not the issue. It tells us really why is India able to employ so many people, and that is on the back of small business and entrepreneurship. And it's a cultural thing. It's an entrepreneurial mindset in the country that people grow up with from a very, very young age. So a lot of people like who have never been entrepreneurs or built businesses, etc., they wonder, what really is entrepreneurship? You know, how does one think about becoming an entrepreneur, etc.? And I'll just very quickly talk about this. It is so simple. It isn't rocket science. It's the most basic human thing. Entrepreneurship is about adding value to other people. It's about service to other people. And then just monetizing that. So it's finding people's needs and then finding a way to serve those needs, providing goods and services in a very simple way. So it's just about adding value to other people. And adding value is very simple. It just comes from listening to other people's needs, being awake, what does the other person need, and finding a way to solve their problem. And that's why we talk about creativity, that creativity is important to come with solutions. But so to listen to other people's needs is just empathy. And Professor Andreas Schleicher was talking about empathy this morning. And he was saying that it's interesting that they're testing in the OECD and PISA, and they're finding that 15-year-olds have got less empathy than 10-year-olds. And they're finding that 15-year-olds have got less creativity than 10-year-olds. And this is why it's so important in the DBE's E-Cubed initiative that we're starting young, that we're starting with play-based learning, working with wonderful partners like Lego and others. We're starting with just games and play and project-based learning from a young age, because it's just to create this repeated mindset, because we see little children don't have to be taught how to be creative. It's absolutely natural to life. Children love to play. They love to come up with ideas, and we all know that. And yet over time, if we just don't include that kind of mindset in the way we teach, then children start to forget. And then that's why we find 15-year-olds who are less creative and with less empathy than 10-year-olds. So if we just start young and we keep this going year after year after year, the wonderful work that the DBE is doing with the E-Cubed initiative, we will find this creativity will not drop. The ability to listen, to find solutions, to find great ideas, and so on will keep growing. So the world might be changing fast, but these are old skills that human beings have known from the dawn of time, is to start off having fun as kids, to listen, to find solutions, etc. So in that regard, it's very exciting to then introduce our panelists. We're going to have a wonderful session this morning. We're going to start with Dr. Chikunda, who's doing some incredible work in about 11 or 12 countries in SADC, including South Africa with UNESCO. Not going to read long bios for everybody just because of time. But Dr. Chikunda has a PhD in Education for Sustainable Development from Rhodes. But it will be very exciting what he's going to share with us about the work that UNESCO is doing now in the region. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Chikunda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you so much, DG, for inviting us. And thank you very much for making me a VIP. This is the first time I'm looking like a VIP. I'll show this to my wife and say, you should stop delaling me because I'm a VIP somewhere. Thank you so much. Can I have the slides, please? My name is Charles Chikunda. I'm working for the UNESCO Regional Office for Southern Africa. We are based in Harare, and we are coordinating 9 countries in the SADC region. The task beforehand is entitled Equipping Learners with Skills for a Changing World with a competence-based curriculum in the context of UNESCO SDGs. And to do this, I'll briefly take you through the mandate of UNESCO. The big mandate of UNESCO is to build peace in the minds of men and women through education, sciences, culture, and information. Now, our mission as the education sector is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong opportunities for all. I started listening from yesterday to today. The language is the same, promoting lifelong learning. Now, we are talking of relevant education in the 21st century. Now, for us, for that education to be relevant, we need to ask ourselves all the time that what are the issues that we are facing in the 21st century? I tried to summarize some of them, but there are a lot. Climate change, mass migration, massive or underemployment, energy, water crisis, environmental degradation. The list is endless. We are also having, in some other corners of the continent, an expanding middle class. And the moment we have that, lifestyles also change. We have a lot of waste and so forth and so forth. Now, we are faced, we call these wicked problems. They are wicked in the sense that they cross from society, environment, economy. And they also have that historicity, cultural, and the science knowledge that we are imparting today, the knowledge, coloniality, and more. If you move around this country, you talk of formerly disadvantaged areas, and the resources there are less than in other parts of the country. So what we are seeing are these wicked problems that affect more those formerly disadvantaged areas. So now, the big question is, given these complex and wicked problems, what do we educate for? It's a question I think that we should always ask ourselves when our children go to school, when we prepare our lessons, when we administer education, what do we educate for? I have some studies here that I picked from, most of them from the internet. Somebody said, the truth is that without significant precautions, education can equip people merely to be more effective vandals of the earth. If one listens carefully, it may even be possible to hear the creation groan at every graduation ceremony when another batch of smart degree-holding but ecologically illiterate Homo sapiens who are eager to succeed are launched into the biosphere. Again, what do we educate for? Somebody said 60%, that was in Australia, of students are training for jobs that will not exist in future. We do have it in our continent as well. People have nice degrees in their pockets, but they cannot fit into the job market. Somebody said 2 billion jobs will disappear, roughly 50% of current jobs on the planet by 2030. And the story goes on. Now, I want to focus a little bit of my talk towards teacher education institutional question. I was so happy this morning. The first two speakers really said what exactly I'm going to repeat and emphasize. The best teacher in the country, I think to me, is the best teacher on earth. Really hit it on in terms of what we need in terms of teaching. So the question is, how can education be empowered to adopt teaching and learning approaches that develop competencies to meet the local and global challenges of the 21st century and beyond? And some of us who are very much keen on teacher education, the question is, how can we prepare teachers with professional competencies that meet the local and global challenges of the 21st century? Now, that will lead me to introduce very quickly what kind of education we're advocating for. The talk here is a competence-based curriculum, and I think it's spot on. But I think we need to unpack it in a context. But generically, this is a curriculum that emphasizes what learners are expected to do rather than mainly focusing what they're expected to know. The doing part is very important in competencies. The doing and the being, very important in competencies. So in principle, this curriculum is learner-centered and adaptive to the changing needs of society. And there are 4 pillars. I'm glad my colleague Dlamini mentioned them all in a very substantive way. Learning to know, that's critical. Learning to do, another very, very critical. Learning to live and learning to be. And the competencies are there, communication and collaboration. When I went to school myself in my primary, we were taught to cover whatever you're writing so that your neighbor, even your best friend, doesn't copy from you. This is how much education destroyed us. We need more of communication and collaboration. You write a point down and say, friend, how do you see this? Critical thinking is again very up there, and problem solving. Imagination and creativity, citizenship, learning to learn, self-efficacy, digital literacy. These are key competencies that we expect to be cutting across the competence-based curriculum. Now, when I went to school, those old days, when we're talking about water, it was nice to know about the hydrological cycle and condensation, evaporation, all those things. This was very nice and cool. We would then sit for a 3-hour examination and pass and become a very important person. I remember I memorized the periodic table when I was 15. And again, it was very cool, but I didn't do much with that knowledge. And currently, most of our teachers are generally very good in making their lesson plans with content refinements and techniques that they will apply, but forget to think and plan what students will do with or about that content. So as we celebrate the good passes, we need to think and say, what are we going to do with the content that they have? What are they going to do with the content that they have? Now, in advocating for the knowledge, I want to show you this video for the kind of teaching that we are advocating for. Let's listen a little bit. It's a 3-minute video, and I hope...
Makanda is a semi-arid town located in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa. It is the economic hub of Makanda local municipality and is home to approximately 82,000 people. It is also home to Rhodes University and the National Arts Festival, which is the largest arts festival on the African continent. As we know, water quality and water scarcity are major concerns in Southern Africa. The current drought in South Africa and rainfall variability has exposed the brittle nature of this country's resilience to water shortages. As a semi-arid town, demand for water is high and the town is plagued with inadequate water supply services issue. In this short film, we take a look at one of the change projects that aim to effect change within the local community to improve the health and quality of river water.
Water is life, and without water, we cannot sustain life. And the number one source of all our water, fresh water, comes from rivers. Unfortunately, rivers in today's modern society are the most polluted. They are under siege by pollution, sewage, alien invasives, and a host of other problems. One way in which we decided to protect rivers in Makanda, South Africa, is by empowering local communities by giving them the tools of science, creating citizen science, and thereby doing the mini-SAS method. They are able to find out the coppers and nunus in the water and understand how good the quality of the river is. By doing that, they can now make strategies put in place that they can go to the local councillors, go to municipalities, and try to stop the pollution at the source. This empowers and mobilizes youth, empowers communities, and thus we create a more healthier society for all, including the ecosystem. Our work as River Rescue really started kicking off in 2019. Since then, we have done numerous river rescue projects, which involves community members and high school children going along the rivers and cleaning up the rivers as they go.
I started to speak with the children and I explained to them, this is the river. Every session, every second weekend, Saturday, we come and clean up. And then after the cleanup, we have a little session with the kids and explain to them what's it about.
Well, I'll cut it short because of time, but this is the argument. Somebody said earlier on, we keep children most of the time in the classroom. So in doing so, we detach them from the realities of the society. And again, going back to my question, what do we educate for? Do we really educate for this? Do we want children only to understand their hydrological cycle without understanding and contributing to issues that is affecting the water system in their communities? So the advantage of this kind of learning and teaching and education is it appeals to a variety of learning domains. Human beings are not only cognitive beings, they are also socio-emotional beings. They are also behavioral and action-oriented beings. They are also transformative. They want to live well. They want to transform their society from issues that they are facing to a better way of living. So let's give children in school a chance. Later on, I'll talk about how best can we also think about assessment in terms of these learning domains. Now, coming back to what I do every day, I coordinate a program called Sustainability Starts with Teachers. It's running in 11 countries in SADC. So with this thinking that I've just shared with you, what are we putting on the table? The first thing is the framing of what we call education for sustainable development. It's a framing that can help us to think about education that empowers learners to take informed decisions and responsible actions for environmental integrity, economic viability, and just society for present and future generations while respecting cultural diversity. More often than not, if we don't take them through processes and activities that make them responsible beings, they will learn other things. Instead of them discussing issues, they will learn how to toy, and that can, because they are confronted with so many sources of knowledge and practices. ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, is also about lifelong learning and is an integral part of quality education. Quality education, by its nature, should be relevant to solving our societal issues. ESD is holistic and transformational education which addresses learning content and outcomes, pedagogy, and the learning environment. So it's a framing that we can also use in teacher development and so forth. It achieves its purpose by transforming society. We, from Southern Africa, we took the 17 SDGs and we make them palatable to our own context in the continent. Instead of saying end poverty, we want learners to think about helping to end poverty. We want them to love water, and so forth, and so forth. So, as UNESCO Regional Office, what tools are we putting on the table? I've mentioned the ESD framing that can give us all those advantages. We also have a policy. DG, can I hand over this to you, please, for the minister, for yourself, and for the deputy minister? This was approved by SADC ministers, the 16 countries in Malawi last year. It was collaboratively designed by all the SADC countries. Our job was to facilitate. I remember in June last week in Malawi, Minister Enji was there. She attended virtually. She also endorsed this policy. And most of these things are already in the South African curriculum. I think what we need to do is to energize pedagogies and so forth. And DG, whilst we are still on that, my colleagues, Shan, where are you? I have a colleague in here. We are planning, and Msanda, our Secretary General for UNESCO, we are going to request to have a policy dialogue in South Africa to roll out this policy very soon in March. So DG, you are going to have visitors to your office, please, to request for that. My humble request to you. I'm sorry, I'm telling you beforehand, but they are coming to your office. And so the framing of good priorities that we can use to make things happen in all the 17 countries, 16 countries in the SADC region, and so forth. One important thing that we want to share, which we are putting on the table, again, we are working very strongly with the Fundisa for Change. I think you all know Fundisa for Change. Again, my colleague Shan is leading that, is we know very well that teachers don't teach what is not assessed. So we are trying to play around with assessment frameworks that we can use to assess all the domains that I spoke about earlier on. We are trying to move as much as we can away from only assessing the cognitive domain. And again, this is being done here in South Africa, led by Fundisa for Change, so things are happening. This is about assessment and so forth. So, coming to an end, I want to go back to my question, what do we educate for? Then we look around and say, what kind of learning do we want in our schools? What kind of assessment do we want in our schools? What competencies do we want with our teachers? What competence do we want with our school supervision, and so forth and so forth. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chikunda. We're going to go straight on to hear from Dr. Jim Taylor, who many of us know from WESA when he was there for 35 years. And over to you, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Taddy, and really great to have Charles Chikunda with us all the way from Harare and UNESCO. It just strikes me that there are 4 reasons why Southern Africa and South Africa is the best place on earth to be living right now. Did you know that? So what are the 4 reasons why this is the best place on earth to live? The first one is geophysical stability. Our continent is incredibly stable. We don't have earthquakes like California, New Zealand, or volcanoes like Japan. Our people are more youthful than any other part of the world. We don't have the old age problems of Sweden and France, where there aren't enough people to look after the elderly, and China as well. The third reason is our resource base is still full of potential. Our water, soil, and air is more clean than most other regions of the world. And the fourth reason, most important, the people of Southern Africa are more in touch with nature and indigenous knowledge systems than any other part of the world. So we now go on to our little talk that kind of emphasizes why education is key to us maintaining the best region of the world. We might then say, what kind of entrepreneurship do we want? And here's Teddy telling us that India has unemployment of around 7%. So in this little talk, we're going to look at 2 models of entrepreneurship. One is much more African than the other. This work is so relevant to the conference objectives, and it was so nice to have Mary Metcalf outline and pull those out of all the talks yesterday. But what are the current priorities of Africa? The beauty of the African Union is it doesn't plan short term. Our strategy is 50 years long. The agenda is for inclusive growth and sustainable development to the year 2063. Africa's resource base is rich, but of course there are risks. The SDGs are what we are all working towards, especially SDG 4 of quality education. And with climate change, poverty and inequality, the planet is at stake, but less damaged in Southern Africa than anywhere else. The President of South Africa took the Just Transitions report to Egypt, to COP26, and the whole world took notice of a different way of transitioning beyond climate change. And I'm going to emphasize that in a minute. This links with the Berlin Conference on Sustainable Development and Education 2030, which Charles alluded to in his work with UNESCO. So we're trying to strengthen education for sustainable development through policy, learning environments, teachers and educators, youth, and of course community as we transform, seek structural change and the technology futures, and we heard a lot about those yesterday. I just want to flag Reimagining Our Futures, the new work out of UNESCO, and how it goes beyond acquisition of knowledge to the idea of new knowledges, empathy and compassion, and hasn't that just been so beautifully emphasized by so many speakers in this conference, and learning through co-engaged relationships rather than the old expert-delivered learning. The ethic of care and shared responsibility. I want to jump back to why it's so fantastic to be living in South and Southern Africa. This work in front of you now is called Taming the Land, and it goes back 400 years before colonialism had its impact in Southern Africa and before fossil fuels were used to reshape the land. People learned to live off the land and shape the land in many sustainable ways that were lost in colonialism and through fossil fuel use. Like imiphenol gathering, the use of fire, hunting, grazing, the Izala dumps are all phenomenal ways people shaped these landscapes. Now, this map is drawn from research from 400 years ago, before colonialism impacted in Southern Africa. And these landscapes were tamed by people to benefit people, plants, and animals, and were largely lost in the fossil fuel era and colonialism. So people who are serious about a post-climate change future are looking to Southern Africa for the key to the future. Because if we can use the wisdom of the past and build on the wisdom of the present, there is a good future for humanity on Earth. But isn't it fascinating that Southern Africa is seen as the catalyst of the future, not just for us Southern African people, but for the whole world? I'm now going to just quickly outline two case studies of entrepreneurship. The first one was a friend of mine, Nati Ndlovu, at Sibongo School. He wanted to make some money. He was in a very poor school from a very poor family. He bought loads of expanded crisps, divided them up into packets, and he sold them to fellow learners. He made quite a lot of money. You could say he's a good entrepreneur. But when you review it, and he and I reviewed it together, he made money, but the learner's health was affected. The crisps aren't good for the kids. It wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't for the common good. We need entrepreneurship for the common good. The Mpopomeni Enviro Champs connected people, planet, and water resources and the waste issues in that township with the authorities, and they built these relationships. They addressed all areas of risk in their township, and in 6 months saved 180,000 rand of treated water that was wasted in the township, to such an extent that the municipality and Mgeni Water are now funding them to look after these resources. Now, this is entrepreneurship for the common good. It generated some money for them. It's good for health, sustainability, and of course, it's an African entrepreneurship. And here are some of the EnviroChamps of Mpopomeni doing their work, measuring water quality, sharing it with the authorities, and working together. WRC funded research on how to scale this up to the rest of South Africa. Thank you, Teddy. And the presidential employment stimulus that the president mentioned yesterday sponsored the first round of 650 youth and now wants to go to 1,500. Minister Creasy said that the EnviroChamps of eThekwini saved 1,500 lives in the recent flooding in Durban. Last thing to say is to flag 2 teacher professional development programs. Fundisa for Change, managed by Shanu, sitting over there, is a phenomenal teacher support program. And then the one Charles just mentioned, the teacher professional development through Sustainability Starts with Teachers. Well, I hope you enjoyed being here, and thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. Now we've got a famous book author coming up next. I think everyone got a copy of Professor Gravitt's book, Teaching for Learning in a Fast-Changing World. Professor Gravitt is the acting DVC for Research and Internationalization at UJ. And over to you, Dr. Gravitt. Thank you.
Good day, colleagues, and it's indeed a privilege to be here today. Thank you. I'm hoping you are clapping for the book, because I'm very proud of this book that we were able to give to each of you. And I want to start to say my talk is about teaching for learning in a fast-changing world. So I will be touching on what the book is about. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge that this book, which is an open source book, was made possible through funding received from eCube and the Lego Foundation. Without this funding, the book would not have been. So thank you very much for that. I also want to acknowledge all the authors in the book who gave their time for free. There was no compensation at all for any of them, because it was really a book that we believe there's a need for it, and a book in which we wanted to express the importance of teaching for learning in a fast-changing world. Last thing about the book, it is open source, as I said. It is available free of charge for anybody to download from the UJ Faculty of Education website, and also it will be made available on the eCube website. So, briefly then, what will I be talking about? 2 broad aspects: teaching for learning in a fast-changing world. And I will be talking very briefly about why teaching for learning specifically, why the emphasis in a fast-changing world, what does that mean, and how. Firstly, to start with, teaching for learning. Now, one might say, but of course, we all teach for learning. I'm not that sure. One often hears teachers talking about covering the curriculum. I get it. They feel under pressure that there's a curriculum that they must deal with. But the notion of learning is not always foregrounded when people talk about teaching. I fully agree with the president of MIT in 2017 who said, if we don't know how we learn, how on earth do we know how to teach? And that is also the focus of the book. It is about addressing teaching through having a deep understanding of learning, and I will say something more about that. And I also draw here on the book of David Perkins, but specifically 2 core words, phrases that he mentions, namely life-worthy and life-ready as it relates to teaching and learning. And all of this I will be linking to the notion of an entrepreneurial mindset. So, if we then look at the work of David Perkins. And he brings forward, which is for me a very important phrase, that he talks about the curriculum should be about life-worthy knowledge and skills. And what does that mean? It refers to knowledge and skills that are likely to matter in the lives that learners are likely to live. And that is what education should be about. It is about education for the now, but it's also for education for the future. But important, it's education that is life-worthy. The next point then that I want to make is related to what I've mentioned before. That if one then wants to teach, to enable learners to get to life-ready knowledge and skills at the bottom, and I'll return to that, the teaching must be such that it is based on a deep understanding of learning. Why? Because if the world is changing fast, and we saw that recently with the pandemic, that teachers had to overnight basically adapt the way that they taught. And the argument is if one has a deep understanding of learning, one would be able to adapt to any context in your teaching and not be married to certain techniques, certain skills, or certain ways of doing that you were always used to. But you will teach to enable learning. And in the book then, there's a strong focus on what are the principles that teachers could use that were derived from the science of learning that could inform their teaching. I fully agree with what was mentioned in the book, How People Learn, Brain, Mind, Experience and School, that if teaching is guided by a core set of learning principles, then the selection of teaching strategies, mediated of course by subject matter, grade level and desired outcome, can be purposeful. The many possibilities then become a rich set of opportunities from which a teacher constructs an instructional program rather than a chaos of competing alternatives. Focusing on how people learn also will help teachers to move beyond either-or dichotomies that have plagued the field of education. And here, for instance, a dichotomy could be direct instruction direct instruction versus project-based learning. And that should not be a dichotomy. It is about what is needed at a specific moment for a specific group of learners. And if one understands learning very well, it helps you to make those decisions. If one says that you teach for learning, the core, creating significant learning experiences for learners. And significance here refers also to learning that is enduring, learning that is important currently and in the future, because it either forms a basis for future learning or it is of value for learners' current lives or the lives they are likely to live. And then it brings me to the point of it is through teaching, through the creation of significant learning experiences for learners, that life-ready knowledge and skills are created. It is through the teaching process that the life-worthy knowledge and skills become life-ready knowledge and skills. And that is learning that transfers, learning that can be used in many different situations now and in the future. And that brings me then to the next point. What does all of that have to do with an entrepreneurial mindset? I would claim that the notion of an entrepreneurial mindset encapsulates both life-worthy and life-ready knowledge and skills. And the notion of an entrepreneurial mindset is very well summarized in this quote. It is a cognitive perspective that enables an individual, and this is important, to create value by recognizing and acting on opportunities, making decisions with limited information, and remaining adaptable and resilient in conditions that are often uncertain and complex. The fast-changing world. And we've spoken about the skills, the competencies that we need for a fast-changing world. And I have spoken about life-worthy and life-ready knowledge. And this entrepreneurial mindset notion seems to be a very apt phrase to summarize what do we need in the fast-changing world. And if one then looks at the type of skills that are related to an entrepreneurial mindset, these are the skills that we also mentioned many times before as the skills necessary for learning and thriving and working in the 21st century. Collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, or innovation thinking, meta-learning, curiosity, resilience, and mindfulness. So to be future-wise, we should be teaching for learning to help our learners, to prepare them well for the world, and think about how we can help our learners to take the knowledge that is in the curriculum, which we hope is life-worthy, to turn that into knowledge that is life-ready. And as I said, a very good way to think about this is creating an entrepreneurial mindset. And such a mindset can be created across the curriculum. Thank you.
Professor Gravett, superb message, I think, for all of us. Absolutely wonderful the way you've linked entrepreneurial mindset and life-worthy knowledge and skills and life-ready knowledge and skills. And just appreciate all the work that you do with the DBE's E-Cubed initiative and making this book open source so that anyone in the world can read it. That is such a precious gift. So now it's very exciting. We're going to hear from a real live entrepreneur who grew up in the Cape. And Michelle de Wet is a fashion designer and business owner of the online store Terry Strong. She founded it in 2018. It isn't easy to do what you do, to build a business online selling fashion and to be able to get people to know about it and to buy your products. So it's very, very exciting to hear about the work you're doing. And then we'll talk afterwards about what you're doing to help young learners in South Africa to learn these principles of entrepreneurial mindset.
Thank you, everyone. I don't have a lot of time allocated, so before I say anything and go into any details, let me showcase my presentation and go directly into it.
My name is Matifa Singala. I am 20 years of age and I completed my matric in 2019. No, I'm not, but I'm currently doing my internship. Yes, I have. I wanted to start my clothing line about crop tops. Yeah, different kind of crop tops. Yes, I did business studies, which taught me a lot about competition, how business work, and what goes into business. I couldn't, hence it didn't give me the basic information about where to start or what to do first or funding. No, what I have learned in school compared to what I have learned in this small business I'm doing my internship are completely different. I feel that school prepared me for the world but did not prepare me for being self-sufficient when it comes to being an entrepreneur and surviving on my own. Well, firstly, I will think about what would be my first step. Where can I get funding? What does the business owner do, and how to run a small business? Okay, so I have a graphic memory, so probably something creative, simple, and easy to understand, like real life examples.
Welcome, finally, to your first step in becoming an entrepreneur and finally getting that idea out and starting your business.
This program was designed to cater for the South African youth that have a goal to start their own small business and become an entrepreneur but not sure where to start. This guide is to assist you through easy to understand modules and enable you to bring your passion to life through examples, practical activities, question and answer sessions, easy to use templates, visual aids, smart tools, and amazing content illustrations, I have to say myself, so as to manage your small business effectively and efficiently.
Now you can see the importance of understanding financial administration. It is so critical to have your processes and your data in order. Let's start with financial literacy.
Bookkeeping and accounting are two different financial terms. Both are numbers related, but bookkeeping is the process of tracking all financial records like income and expenses. Example, I have a fashion business and I take all the receipts of payments and revenue and record it on a financial platform for record keeping.
This is going to be a one-stop shop where all of your business questions will be answered at the click of a button. One-day paperless company registrations that cost less than 200 Rand. Tax registration, BBE certificates, domain registrations, and opening a business bank account. It'll all be done here. This portal was created to make it easier to do business in South Africa.
In this section, we're going to learn all about digital marketing and the wide world of online marketing as some people know it. Digital marketing is all about connecting with the consumers that uses the internet or online devices and online digital platforms. Let's go into the various methods of digital and online marketing and show you how it can benefit your small business.
Thank you for allowing me to share insight into an opportunity for young learners. The visionary goals, together with stakeholders, are guiding aspiring entrepreneurs to start their own small business, empowering youth with an entrepreneurial mindset, reducing unemployment, using relevant and creative methods to keep the learners engaged, and finally, to create a community that understands sustainability.
So there you have it. I hope you have most of the information that I want to actually transfer to you. But what I firstly want to say is thank you so much. I feel extremely honored to be here and extremely honored to transfer the message that we eventually want to carry over to students and to the stakeholders attending today. So I'm the creator of this 10-module course, and before I go into any of the details, I thought I'd introduce myself to you. Michelle de Wet, as you know. I've been in the corporate business and in the self-owning business for a long time, for many years. I grew up in a small town called Atlantis, which is outside of Cape Town, and later in life, I grew up on the Cape Flats with my grandmother. I grew up in a world where student council protests and boycotts were voiced very loudly, where abuse and discrimination were methods of communication. Sacrifices were endured and dreams were only dreams. I grew up in a world where I saw the lack of opportunities and how members of communities struggled and lacked understanding of how to better their life. A few years ago, I asked myself, besides the academic requirements for youth, what if communities and youth were provided the skills in simplified terms to create their own businesses and become entrepreneurs despite their socio-economic pressures? Yeah, it is easier said than done. But through my entrepreneurship experiences and skills, my corporate skills, and my business owning failures and successes, my first module was created based on the most important skill, which is entrepreneurial mindset. So let me tell you a bit also about my childhood. When I was about 10, I stood on a market with my mother and we sold a few items. I only had handcrafted pillows, and someone came past, bought the pillows for their bedroom, and my mother gave me the money as a reward. I was super excited, but at the same time, the reason I'm telling you this is to tell you that children are never too young to learn about how to be an entrepreneur. And little did I know that this would be a ripple effect for many entrepreneurship experiences that created and contributed to my income stream over the years. So now let me tell you a bit about the course. I'm speaking fast because I don't have a lot of time. The course was created over a period of 3 years. It's to amplify development skills when starting any small business amongst the youth, improve standards of living, reduce unemployment, and improve the understanding of wealth. And wealth is not being rich. I mean wealth by being financially free from debt. Together with the telematic services in University of Stellenbosch, we brought this course to life through their recording studios and through different illustrations. This course was modified to target scholars, however, it can be used by anyone who would like to learn more about entrepreneurship skills. This course is not certified, it's not accredited, and learners are welcome to do this course in their own time, over a period of time, at no cost. So the intent is to have it free for all scholars and youth and young adults. With that said, at the end of each module, exams are not written, tests are not written, but activities and question and answer sessions have been used to apply the skills that they have learned. Please keep in mind, though, that this course is made up of simplified methods, but still keeping it current based on today's social and technical trends, with basic fundamentals of starting a small business. At a later stage, I'm hoping to expand each module based on the requirements and the needs and the disabilities. So where to from here? In the coming weeks, the course will be released to several learners to bench test all 10 modules in order for us to ensure that all concerns and queries have been covered and that we receive feedback and address every situation that is possible. Thereafter, we will consider and look at digital workbooks, which will be finalized before releasing it for educational purposes, as well as a website to provide ample information to anyone interested in the entrepreneurship course. Our idea and our intent is to create awareness, which we would also like to create student reward programs and recognition to empower and motivate creativity amongst youth and scholars. Currently, we are in discussions with the Department of Basic Education to include it in the E-Cubed Teacher Learner Program, as well as various projects and platforms accessible to communities, and explore the training of teachers with skills to implement this course effectively. So concentrating on educating the educators. In the future, we would like to further our engagement with private sector partnerships relating to social responsibilities, various stakeholders like yourselves, and educational institutions to build and develop entrepreneurial skills amongst our youth. Children see what we do. Children do what we do. Make sure that our influence, your influence, is positive, because that's where adopting a positive mindset starts. The young ones of today are more expressive about their talents and voice it more confidently. Let's leverage on that and add these tools to build their careers. This life is hard enough, and the pressures are hard enough. All we have to do is look at the amount of suicides amongst our young youth that's taking place. So we need to create communities of creative inspiration to progress successfully with this plan. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and what I had to offer today, and I'm looking forward to engaging with all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Such a wonderful thing you're pulling this course together for learners, but I think everyone in this room should be so proud of you and everyone like you that's creating all the jobs in South Africa that ultimately feeds 90% of all the families in our country. And I just wanted to thank all of our panelists for honoring your time of all the delegates. We are going to turn over to questions now. I just wanted to summarize on some of the things that the panelists have said. There's a saying that you should never let a good crisis go to waste. I think it's a great saying, and I think entrepreneurs are the first people who don't let a good crisis go to waste. And if we think of, for example, the issues in our country with power generation now, and we just had two panelists here, Dr. Chikunda and Dr. Taylor, really linking sustainable development with entrepreneurship. And just that on its own, power generation in South Africa, which can be done at a tiny scale, a bigger scale, at a huge scale, is right there a job creation opportunity for huge numbers of South Africans. So linking sustainability and job creation, I think the first two speakers, what they were speaking about is of extreme importance in this country. We were talking about at the beginning that ultimately this is about job creation, that really we can live in a country where everybody could be employed. And I was using that example in India of 1.5 billion people and only 7% unemployment. And that's because of small business and the mindset that they develop children with from the youngest ages. And we don't have to use big words about these things. It's very, very simple. And what is wonderful is that these skills that we're wanting to teach here, they're already in the CAPS curriculum, in Section 1 in CAPS under Goals and Purpose. And Dr. Chikunda used the word energizing. It's just about activating these things, teaching our youngsters to try new things, to work with other people, to use their creativity to solve problems, and develop their empathy. And the teachers in our country, that is the embodiment of empathy, why people become teachers. And empathy is the starting state you need to be an entrepreneur, that you care for other people and you want to add value to their lives and you come up with solutions to help them. And in that way, you can also make money. And in turn, it creates jobs. So what we're talking about is actually very simple, very fundamental, very basic, but absolutely critical to the future of South Africa, so that all of us can be working and live dignified lives and have that stability. And finally, to say that these things that we think play and games starting at a young age, it sounds like that's not serious learning. Serious learning is only about learning maths and English and language and etc. But in actual fact, this this type of learning is what creates automatically as an outcome creativity, citizenship, collaboration, happiness, all these things that the panelists have spoken about, and in turn leads to the very things which we want, which is a strong economy and jobs and so on. And by the way, when children learn like this, the foundational skills become intrinsic. So it's not that through play that you don't actually learn mathematics and language skills, the opposite. In fact, through structured play in the right kind of way, mathematics becomes intrinsic and language skills becomes intrinsic and working with other people. So to build foundational skills, to support academic success, these things are absolutely interwoven. And I hope that that message has really come through loud and clear from the panelists. So now we're going to open up to all of the delegates to have any questions. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, so I think if we could limit it to 5 questions, if people could please keep the questions short and focused, or if it's a comment, please short and focused. We'll be very, very grateful, as we've got 2 very important practitioners who are going to be speaking after this. And so if we could hand out the microphones. Thank you. Great. Do we have any hands? I can't see. Yes. The gentleman with the red shirt, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Moses Sogakama from Sohang Youth Project based in Katlehong. Mine is on, ma'am, is it, what's his name, by the way? The last speaker, the designer. Because I'm from Sohang, of which deals with community and youth development. And in 2019, in Emperor's Palace, we raised this issue with DG and everyone which was there, and from all the recommendations and even on this document, still we don't have in terms of choirs being reflected in terms of the creatives, because we engage with the office, and then that day HD took us to another person, and still today there's nothing which is happening. And we all know that all these kids, not all of them are gifted academically, and we've been trying to assist in terms of providing alternative, because primarily we kept the schedule of drugs through Gimoja and other programs. So the Arising Stars was offering an opportunity for them. So I wanted to check from you, because these are some of the things, even if they are talking about entrepreneurship, but the creatives are not taken serious. And when you check around the country, they are making a lot of money. And with children, they are by nature, they are very energetic. And if that energy is not well aligned, then that's when they become doing what they are doing in terms of drugs and what is happening in our school. So I wanted to check to you, do you get in terms of support? Who gives you in terms of support? What is it that we have done? Because most of our schools, they don't have such programs, and the one that I've spoken about of creatives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. We had another question.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Here. So my name is Tsepiso Malema. It's just the surname, don't worry. So I'm probably the youngest in the house. I'm a 20-year-old entrepreneur and a third-year student at the University of Pretoria. And I believe I'm a case study when it comes to entrepreneurship, because I started my company called Gamers Territory when I was in grade 10 back in 2018, the University of Washington. So I'm actually sharing this success story to show that there are programs that are out there, like the Nkatuto Propeller and the program Ms. Michelle was actually presenting there are programs like that which nurture young people to think innovatively. And I believe those particular kinds of programs need support, throughout the entire country, because I believe I'm speaking from a point of privilege because I had such programs in my school, and it was at a township school in Ivory Park. And I have a proposal. Since I recently matriculated in 2020, there were tablets that were given unto us as learners, and those tablets had textbooks only. There was nothing innovative about in that tablet. And so in my company, Gamers Territory, we focused on advocating for gaming in Africa, and we have recently built our educational game called Scala, which is a slang for school in the townships. So Scala aims to actually demonstrate that solving problems doesn't have to end with just an answer. So we are adding an element of fun into maths and science. So what I'm proposing is that, in those particular kind of devices or gadgets that are distributed in schools, let's have, platforms such as Gala in those tablets to help, make the education system much more fun and easy to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malema. We can take, I think, one more question. Yes, please, at this table.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my name is Jabu Tlakula, responsible for quality learning and teaching in the country. Chair, I want to concur with the speaker who said that the country is quite fortunate. Fortunate in the sense that we are not having the kind of challenges that other countries are having in terms of their population dynamics. Here in the country, we still have an advantage of the number of youth that we have. But we refer to that youth as an uncut diamond or a still rough diamond, and what is it that we need to do? Chair, I wanted to just raise two questions, and the other questions I'll raise them in the commissions. I heard Dr. Chukudu speaking about sustainable education, which we fully concur. Our approach to knowledge is more fragmented, and knowledge is not supposed to be fragmented. And when we're talking about sustainable education, that's when you bring knowledge and discipline cohesively together when you're implementing them. But there's something that we are missing in that equation, is that we are ignoring the 6 C's that brings about issues around innovation, collaboration, and whatever. And the question that one wants to ask is, how then do we ensure that those 6 C's within the classroom are incorporated? And it will not only start in the classroom. It's the model that higher education institutions are also utilizing in terms of producing educators. One speaker also spoke about the whole institution approach. One wanted to find out, what do you mean when you're talking about whole institution approach? My view is that when you're talking about whole institution approach, you're also bringing about the collaboration of policies so that you produce one product. There's also an issue where a colleague also spoke about, I think it's Dr. Taylor, who spoke about Southern Africa being the catalyst of the future. I want us to define in terms of what do you mean when you're saying Southern Africa is the catalyst for the future, because my assumption is that economic growth is not synonymous to social development. They are supposed to be complementary to each other. I think some of the issues, I'll raise them in the commissions. But in conclusion, I want to also agree that we should not be teaching for assessment, but we need to be teaching for learning and make assessment evidence of learning. Thank you very much.
Jabu, thank you very much. So because of time, if it's okay, I'm going to call on each of the panelists to answer these 3 questions. Firstly, Michelle, if you could kindly answer the question from Moses. What would you see as a way that, he was saying not all kids are gifted academically, but kids that are creative, and for example, yourself with dressmaking and so on, kids who've got different types of creative talents, how can that be developed and stimulated and also be turned into entrepreneurial opportunities? Then Professor Gravett, if you could answer Tsepiso he was talking about how we can teach kids to think innovatively from a young age by starting early. You were talking a lot about entrepreneurial mindset. How can that be fostered from a young age? Then thirdly, Dr. Chikunda, if you could please answer Jabu's question just about how can sustainable education or education for sustainability help to make knowledge less fragmented, to make it more integrated? And then Dr. Taylor, if you could talk briefly about this idea of Southern Africa being a catalyst for the future.
Skills that are also part of an entrepreneurial mindset. And let me also use the opportunity, and I know Jim thinks also this way, that an entrepreneurial mindset is important, of course, to develop entrepreneurship, but it's also about creating value for others, which does not necessarily mean you're involved in business. It's a way of thinking. But to come back to, how do you teach these skills? It is not, you don't teach the skills separately. You teach it through knowledge, because the knowledge and the skills are intertwined. So it is about how we teach in the classroom. How do we take the knowledge, the life-worthy knowledge, and translate that life-worthy knowledge into usable knowledge for every day, which are skills. And in our research, what we found is that it is particularly if a teacher understands very well how to use questions skillfully, to help learners reflect, but also to help them think deeply, think widely, think creatively. So the skillful use of questions is very important. And then also, from early on, learning through making, but also making linked to knowledge. So it is about the how of teaching, which is important to develop these skills.
Thank you very much. The 6 C's. I hope I understand all the 6 C's, but I wish Jamini was here to assist me to answer the question. But in our proposal in terms of education for sustainable development, the thinking is really to bring the 6 C's together. How do we do that? It's a question that requires the whole curriculum thinking, from curriculum planning, from policies to lesson planning to assessment. And as I showed in the little video, the shift that we're thinking of from teaching for knowledge to teaching about or for doing, so that the knowledge that they get is translated into societal good, to solve issues that we are facing in the community. So we bring all the 6 C's. So in my lesson planning, for example, if I'm talking about rivers, I'm so fond of rivers, the president is so fond of trees. If we're talking about rivers, it's good enough to talk about tributaries and all those things. But we have a river. Every school, wherever it is, there's a river adjacent to it. And that river, as we are talking now, as we are in the classroom, is going through some unsustainable challenges. So we need the knowledge for them to translate, learners to translate that knowledge into critical thinking, into doing, into contributing towards societal good. So we talk of curriculum planning, delivery, pedagogy, which is very key in this approach, and assessment. And we talk of assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning. If you bring all those together and the whole school institution approach, where the school is not seen to be detached from the community, but the school is part and parcel of the community. Whatever community issues we have, they are part and parcel of what is learned in the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. I just love the quality of the observations and questions. Thank you very much for those who made them. When Wahida Carvello and James convened this session, they said, we're talking about entrepreneurship, but we're doing it in an African way. What would be for the benefit of all and the common good? We're not talking about entrepreneurship where individuals get rich and become heroes at the expense of others. This is a much more inclusive thing, and we really need to thank Wahida and James for those insights. So how is Southern Africa becoming the catalyst of the future was an observation my colleague made there. Well, Southern Africa is a melting pot of connectivity. Southern Africa has direct connections with the great wisdom of Africa, which was denigrated, suppressed, and ignored through the colonial era. We can be proud of those histories without reifying them or romanticizing them, but understanding that they really kept people and plants and animals alive for thousands of years. It's only the fossil fuel era that put our people and planet at enormous risk. Southern Africa has largely escaped much of that devastation, and we can build on these cultural heritages, the cultural diversity, and these phenomenal landscapes that we have all around us to build a future that not only us, but the whole world could become proud of. And of course, as the state president said yesterday, we have a sturdy tree in Southern Africa, but the roots of that tree are education. And every single person in this room is working to find an education that strengthens those roots and grows a flourishing future for all of us. So thank you all for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. Just a big thank you again to our 4 panelists. If we can just be thanking them all together. Thank you very much. Now it's a great privilege and pleasure to call through the podium up onto the stage Ms. Barbara Mokwatlo, who's a teacher with some significant experience in this field, and also to call up, please, Mr. Basil Manuel from NAPTOSA to please come up to the stage. Thank you very much. And just while we're waiting for, firstly, Barbara to come up, somebody left their glasses in the ladies' bathroom, so if anybody is missing their glasses, they are here. Wonderful. So just to introduce Ms. Mokwatlo, it's really such a privilege to have a senior phase teacher here who's been working with this approach for the past 9 years. She's been a senior phase teacher, and along with her bachelor's degree, she's become a very dedicated and valuable teacher in her school and her community. She's passionate about financial literacy and entrepreneurship education. With her school, she hosts financial literacy workshops for parents. She invites big banks and insurance companies to come to the school to train parents. Learners open savings accounts. She also organized market entrepreneur days at the school, career dress-up days, helps learners think about finding their careers. Also those who are interested in entrepreneurship, how to make their own money and be their own bosses. So a real 21st century teacher. And Barbara, if you can also talk about, we heard from the previous speakers that this is about a way of teaching. It's a pedagogical approach. It's already in the curriculum in terms of content, but it's about a way of teaching through doing and getting your learners to actually be engaged. and in the process developing this kind of mindset and competency of adding value to other people. And in this process, we develop these skills that ultimately lead to employability. So if you could talk about how you're doing that in your classroom and in your school. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I feel like I'm so loud because I'm a teacher. If you hear me, clap once. If you hear me, clap twice. 3 times. Yes, I'm a teacher. I feel like singing, you know, because there's... Do I still have 10 minutes? Oh, okay, now, okay, I'm going to sing a short song, ne? Please back me up, those who know the song. And if you don't know the song, just clap, ne? Ikyupti kai rata, ibile kai toka, Afrika kaufela, jikelele, 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 jikelele. Thank you. You guys can sing, eh? Clap hands for yourselves. Yeah, if you are in Memo Gatwa's class, you will know that you can't just sit. And if you are the principal of my school, you know Miss Mugwatwa's class is the very loud class in the school. So we don't keep quiet in my class. Even the shy learners or the learners with disabilities, learning disabilities, we try to accommodate them. So today, I'm going to talk about E-Cubed. In 2018, Department of Basic Education launched E-Cubed. And E-Cubed just enhanced. You know, I'm a motivated person. So when E-Cubed came, it just elevated and took my, my experience of teaching to another level. So E-Cubed is an initiative by the Department of Basic Education where they train teachers to teach learners about entrepreneurship, employability, and education. So we prepare the learner for the 21st century, and we equip them with the skills that they need today to survive today. So the learners that we have taught since 2018, we are sure that most of them, they're not going to stay at home after matric or when they can't go and register at the universities. So at Lebanon Primary School, this is the dusty streets of Hammanskraal. I know most of the people know Hammanskraal for other bad reasons, but today I'm going to tell you about Hammanskraal, where I teach, the type of learners that I teach. I'm very passionate about these kids. They are grade 7s. Even other like low classes. Oh my God. Every time I talk about my kids, I won't stop. I wish that the program director have given me at least 30 minutes so that you can enter into my world. But I will try to summarize how I practice teaching in my school. So, in schools with E-Cubed, we have minds of dreams and creativity and ideas. These kids are the ones that are carrying solutions to the African problems that we have today. They are very, very intelligent. Every child is born intelligent. Every child. It's us who project our limitations on them. So these kids are very, very, if you listen to them, because you know what I do, I don't teach. I don't talk and talk. I have sinuses, so chalk, I left it long time ago. So when I teach, I facilitate learning. And that's what E-Cubed did for me. E-Cubed helped me to facilitate learning. And in the process, I'm also learning from these kids. So we have to create a space where learners feel safe to come into a classroom. You know, if I'm not on a duty rooster during lunch, or I'm marking in the staff room, and the other teachers, maybe she's not in, she's sick. The first person that kids come to, it's me. And they're like, ma'am, can you please come to class? Sometimes they don't even want to go to the bathroom to take a short break. But if it's other period, you'll see them up and down, up and down. But when Memo so, and have adopted that because eCubed has made me that type of a teacher who believes that learners are supposed to have an environment where they're supposed to have a voice in a classroom. So entrepreneurship teaches learners skills that help them to collaborate. Collaboration in classrooms, we pair them. When we have a certain topic, they have to be in groups or in tutus so that they can discuss, come up with solutions. And then also, we come up with human-centered design thinking. All the problems that they have in their community, day-to-day life of an entrepreneur. Even if you're a medical doctor, please open your doors. 30 minutes is enough so that they must just come and see. And then also, we need lessons about copyrights, especially in the public performing and licensing. Most of the learners today are influencers on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. So we need to empower them with the information on how to copyright their ideas. And also, personal branding is very important. These kids, as a teacher, I only know a minimal information, but I want to teach these kids about personal branding, especially on Facebook, about sharing posts and liking posts, and also sustainability development goals. Those are very important because they teach us where we are going as a country. And infrastructure, if the department is going to build new classes, I request that you build 21st century classes where we have studios, where we have art classes, labs. So if you are going to build the infrastructure, build infrastructure of the world of today. And then teacher development. As teachers, not only do we want to grow in education, but I realize that in most of the private schools, teachers also continue their studies with MBAs. So as public servants as well, we would like to engage in that. So we ask for bursaries to go into GIBS schools so that we can empower these kids more. These are some of the learners that we had a vegetable garden last year that produced vegetables, and also they were serving at the SNNP of the school, and also the leftover they were selling in the community. This is a learner who was trying to solve load shedding, and also, so he created a candle holder, and also for guys, for the people who are praying at church using different colored candles. So this candle holder, you can put in different colored candles. Thank you.
Fantastic. Wow. Wow, she said it all. Thank you, Ms. Mokwatlo. And thank you for allowing children to be what they are. You said creative, interested, awake. Thank you. It's a great honor and privilege to call Mr. Basil Manuel from NAPTOSA. Thank you, sir, for the incredible work you do to support teachers. Over to you.
Let's first raise that. You know, I'm not vertically challenged. Ladies, gentlemen, good afternoon. And let me congratulate the speaker who came ahead of me. I would have loved to have her at the school where I was head because of that vibrance, that enthusiasm, that wanting to do the job that we believe teachers should be doing. But I'm also at a distinct disadvantage, you know, that I'm the only one that doesn't come with an E-cubed view here. I don't. I'm the one who comes with a view that is not attached. So I don't have a testimonial. But what I want to do is reflect on what has been said and some of the things that we may have synergy with and the other things that we may find we depart from. We can view entrepreneurship very narrowly as preparing children to be entrepreneurs. I believe it's narrow, it's not where teaching is. Or we can teach thinking as an entrepreneur. And thinking in a particular way, thinking that broadens skills, thinking that equips you to participate at other levels. That is what teachers do. It is not about one specific thing. However, the skills of thinking must be taught so that our children are equipped to go out and do different things. Now, I want to reflect specifically on one or two things. Remember the CAPS document, which is the Bible, insofar as teachers are concerned, already has all the subjects that are aligned to have the possibility of entrepreneurship. I'm talking about business studies, I'm talking about accounting, economics, tourism, hospitality, and I can go on and on and on. Teaching them just as they are, without equipping the learners to think about what they are being taught, is then the problem. I quote Professor Ballum when he said that we must reflect on the functionality of specific sectors. He went on, and I jump, the specific roles that ensure that fundamental skills are taught, reading, writing, thinking, etc. That is what teachers must be doing. But there was a beautiful part of the presentation done by one of our presenters here that read that teachers don't bother about what is not assessed. And that is sadly a commentary on where we are, because we are teaching because there's an exam at the end of the day. And that is where the fundamental problem lies, is that we forget that those things that are not assessed may be as important as the things that are assessed. But because we are exam-driven, we then rush headlong to go into one particular direction. Now, the intersection between teachers' teaching skills or teacher skills, entrepreneurship, in that middle zone, there are so many other skills that we need to look at. Teachers of the 20th century, most of them have been trained in the 20th century, have to prepare children for the 21st century, for skills that they themselves may not even know. So there is a fundamental, a very fundamental need to ensure that we upskill our teachers. But at the same time, entrepreneurship must and cannot be seen narrowly. It must be in the context, as one of our other speakers said, in the context of thinking and the application of skills. So what exactly are schools supposed to be doing? Is it the role of schools to manufacture people ready for the place of work? I've been a teacher for 30 years. I've been a headmaster for 18 years. And it was never my understanding that we are molding people to go into the place of work, but rather we are equipping them with the skills, the values, the attitude, the training, and many other things to make choices and to be critical in choices about the job they're going to do. So let's not confuse the roles we have. So they must be able to challenge these new competencies. They must be able to be citizens. And let's reflect on citizenry in South Africa. What a difficult job it has become. When we have people who use the opportunity to burgle our schools during the holidays, to break down the little they have in their own community, whose brothers and sisters are coming to the same school, they will break it down. This morning on Twitter, people stealing a cable, electric cable, in front of a police station, whilst the police station was locked and the police were inside because they are afraid of coming out at night. These are the citizens that we have to teach. But citizenry, teaching citizenry is a very different concept. We've got to teach digital literacy in the context of difficulties with power. But somebody made a very important point, and that point being that ICT is not only a skill for the changing world. Ella said that earlier on, because when we think entrepreneurship, we can't divorce it from ICT, but we can also link it to the fact that when we talk about 21st century skills, one of the most important things about the 21st century is not going to be ICT, it's going to be whether we can survive in the climate that we've left behind. So to the gentleman who spoke about the climate change, it's such a pity that few people focused on it, because it was probably one of the greater parts to say, yes, even as an entrepreneur, you must be one that is going to ensure sustainability of our environment, that you are going to be developing a citizenry that knows that they must look after the environment. We have to develop a caring citizenry. We have to develop people who are going to look after one another. That is what was said. But we can't narrow it down so much so that we forget what we already have. The reminder of what we have. Martin Gustafsson said something to the same effect, quoting the Brookings study, that the CAPS is very well geared to 21st century skills. And if entrepreneurship has to be one of those 21st century skills, we are there already. We must now ensure that we have the right methodologies to give life to that particular thing. We've got to ensure that children acquire and apply the knowledge and skills in ways that are meaningful to them. That's a direct quote. To end, Mr. Chair, you see I've been born with a gift of brevity. Susan Hopgood, the Education International president, has said this, and I think I want to leave you with this thought, because of where we are, the juncture that we are at. Instead of building back better, many governments, and she's talking about the world, are doing little to support the recovery of even the basics of our schools and communities. Across the world, education financing is in crisis. There is insufficient investment in teachers, the most important resource, whilst privatization and commercialization in and of education continues to increase. We need to be careful that what we are doing is building the education system in its broadest nature to equip our children to have the choices that we believe we should be teaching them. I thank you. Thank you. Something's fine. Thank you very much.
Mr. Manuel, incredible. He didn't have long to prepare this talk because Mr. Maluleke was going to be speaking. And that just shows how teachers and principals in this country are developed to be able to do something at such high speed. So brilliant and exactly spot on to what we're talking about. I think Mr. Manuel said this cannot be seen narrowly, and this echoes what Prof. Gravitz said. This isn't only about creating entrepreneurs. Some people are naturally going to gravitate in that direction. This is about developing a mindset, thinking in a broader way, broader set of skills so you can participate at a higher level. And Mr. Manuel said as well, it's in the CAPS document. It has all these subjects. It's there in the Bible, to use his words. And so this is really, I think, a revival. And it is just really about activating, using the words that Mr. Chikunda used in the last panel, activating what is there. And Mr. Manuel spoke about methodologies to give this life, so that we can teach the skills, values, attitudes, citizenry, etc. in our young people. So it's been an incredibly exciting panel. I think we can take just time for one question or one comment to the respondents here, and then we could just maybe ask DG to close this panel and this session before we break for lunch. So just in front here, please, could you go ahead? If we could have a microphone here. Great, right in front. Thank you. The lady in red here, just you've gone past her. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dimakatso Babe from United Front in School Governing Bodies. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I don't know whether it's a comment or it's a question. I'd rather settle for a comment. Thank you so much to the presenters and to the lady that comes from Hammanskraal. I would love to say thank you so much, and I would love to emphasize on the sustainability issue, to say, you know, when we're talking about SDF4, we're talking about sustainable development, sorry about that, goal 4. One thing that we don't have to leave out when you're talking about entrepreneurial is about behavioral and moral development, because as we're speaking, we're talking about also the environment, and mostly the last speakers just said, mostly is if it's not going to be a vital teaching and learning environment where the kids are able to have enough resources and take care of their resources, which then talks to the centenary story where we're saying we teach them to take care of their resources, not to let them go to waste, in a way that they'll be able to sustain their resources. I would like to make an example of one of the schools in the Joburg West, where 2 weeks it was in the news where even the grade 12 were sitting on the floor because now the chairs and the desk were stolen by the same community and even by the same learners. I would love to say to our DGs and our district managers, we need to work together with the school governing body to make sure that the kids and even the staff, because now at Sebetsa Otole Muputso, a school in Joburg West, the school governing body said even the staff are stealing those chairs to go and open the shebins. And another school that I got a call 2 days ago, it's Sakisizwe.
Dimakatso, if you can kindly wrap up soon.
I'm going to wrap up
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you so much, Chair. Also, it's always burglary, and the kids are, as I'm talking to you, they're sitting on the chair. So I'm trying to say, please, can we try to go with the SDG4 and really go with sustainability? I'm so sorry I'm disturbed. In a way that we are able to sustain our infrastructure, that will also help our learning and teaching environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Critical point, and your point on behavioral and moral development linked. Mr. Mweli, over to you. Thank you. Please, Mr. Manuel.
Ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure to me is about dignity. And the quality of our infrastructure will dictate whether we are treating our children and our teachers with dignity. And that is what we have to strive to do, that every single person has to be treated with dignity. We cannot teach children about dignity if we don't treat themselves with dignity. So whether it is in the provision of ablution facilities or classroom space or classrooms or even a proper school, the important thing is that it must be done in a dignified manner. And secondly, this is why teaching is such a difficult job. to teach people to respect themselves first, then to respect the others and give the others the chances that they had. That is the task. So, ma'am, it takes a lot. But I want to ask you, we mustn't throw stones at one another. Parents, let's not throw stones at one another. What we must do is work together. Thank you.
For me, I would just like to say, I think as parents and teachers and everyone, every stakeholder, we need to be first self-aware. Because when you are self-aware and know who you are and know what you want, I think you'll be able to respect your environment and also the people around you and the resources that you have, knowing that tomorrow I'm going to need these resources again, or I'm going to need, somebody else is going to come in and need these resources. As much as they help me, they're going to help somebody else. So that's where empathy and emotional intelligence comes in. So thank you so much.
Give Teddy and the two colleagues a big hand of applause. Yo, these guys are on fire, man. Goeie genade. Where do you get this fire? Basil, that you are born with a gift of brevity, that one is a question mark, bro. We still have to observe that for some time. But I'm quite impressed, I must say. Thank you very much, Teddy. Thank you, Ms. Matafeni, for your excellent presentation. Excellent. Oozing with passion every second. Give her a big hand of applause. Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Manuel, you know that I pounce on you anytime. You are as prepared as though you knew that we'll pick you if Mgwena doesn't pitch. You've done exceptionally well also. Let's give Mr. Manuel a big hand of applause. Well, these people who are stealing furniture from the school, including learners, it means life orientation has made no impact on them, simply because of their attitude towards life orientation. Like one fellow that I got interviewed with, he said there's no need for life orientation, we must get rid of them. Get rid of it. You see, when we get rid of life orientation, this is what happens. You see, empathy, care, making sure that you display the ethics that are required to those that you live with and so on. I think that's very important that we remember that. We're not doing well on time, but we'll come back after lunch. We're going to break for lunch now. I suggest that we take lunch up to 14 hours. And then you'll have about 40 minutes instead of the original 1 hour. I don't know what people do in 1 hour for lunch, because all that you do, you go out and eat and you come back. And you need about 10 to 15 minutes to enjoy your plate, then you come back. I know that you still have to queue, but 40 minutes should be enough. The good thing is that I'm not sure whether it's called an open plan for feeding. They've prepared that outside as you go. The place to get food to eat will be immediately available as you go out. So I'm suggesting that we come back at 14 hours. In other words, 2 o'clock on the dot. Is that fine? The eCube team, we humbly request that you come on stage. eCube team and those who presented, Prof. Graffet and others, you please come on stage so that a picture is taken of the eCube team. The rest, lunch is served. Thank you. See you at 14 hours.